Let's welcome to the stage Raitis Velps from Corebook, and he'll speak about the future of generative brand design. Welcome.
All right, all right. Really excited to be on this stage. Fun fact, actually, just last year I was with my teammate in the startup expo. So, as Drake would say, started from bottom, now we're here, right? So, the topic at hand is the future of generative brand design. But to think about the future, we first have to understand what has come before, what do we have now. But even before that, we have to get to know each other a little bit. So, my name is Raitis. Fun fact, in Finnish, it means sober. So, my parents definitely was very wishful when they gave that name to me. I'm local of Baltic region, fellow Latvian here. But with a global presence in the branding industry, as I have the honor to work with the brands across the globe, starting from Japan, across the sea to California. One of the things that my close friends know very well about me is that I'm a huge Star Wars nerd, right? So not only I have seen all of the movies, animated TV shows, but I even have read the novelizations of them. So that is a dedication. Another thing about me is that I'm an ex-gamer. So I grew up playing PlayStation, then I switched into PC gaming. And that played a huge role in my life as it gave me that push to make decisions fast and be a very early adopter of new things. Now I'm a retired one, and fellow gamers would say that I am casual now, so yeah. One thing that still plays a huge role in my life is my love of music. So I started listening to electronic music, and these cool guys in a helmet, Daft Punk, introduced me to this music genre. And as I grew up, my music taste of course evolved, and now I'm listening more towards classical music, and my favorite artist at the moment is Nicolas Boutel, who famously composed a soundtrack for HBO TV show Succession. Very recommended. And of course we do have to talk about tech and brands, so I wanted to combine them in one thing. And my favorite brand at the moment is Nothing brand. Who heard about Nothing? Oh, yeah? Yeah, so. I feel like they are doing such an incredible job on just doing a new thing in already established market. Everybody of us have these slabs of glass that we use daily, right? And just being brave enough to bring a fresh air in already established market is such a cool thing to do. And yeah, I am a Chief Marketing Officer at a Latvian startup called Corebook. And we are online brand guidelines platform with a mission called Brand 2025, where we believe that static brand guidelines will be a thing of the past by that year. And yeah. Now that we know a little bit each other, let's get to the topic, brand design. So before we can look into the future of brand design and what it means, we have to take a look at where it all started. So since the very inception of humankind, we have used symbols to represent our affiliation to some tribe. And as the time went on, we started to design crests, right? And even us as children, we scribbled on our white paper symbols. We drew our family that represented some bigger meaning. So we always have put in a huge meaning behind symbols that we use and affiliate with. And from brand design perspective, in those times, it usually meant that we had to spend huge amount of time to create a small batch of assets. You could spend weeks creating a one version of a crest. And if you had to go in and replicate that whole brand design, you had to spend the same amount of time to do so. So essentially we used very, very simple, and I would even call dumb tools to create very limited batch of creative assets. And then for somehow people started to recognize that, hey, those creative assets that we are creating are valuable and we should actually go ahead and protect them. And after they are protected, we of course want to commercialize them and we want to sell things. And at that point, there was limited versions of brand assets that we used on environmental spaces. We use that on our product labels. Fun fact about Jack Daniel's label: it has almost no changes in its original design since its very, very early inception. So at that stage where we're starting to see a little bit more commercial use of brand design, the space where we use it is very, very limiting, and we don't have to think about multiple variants of the same asset. If we have created a label, we can most probably use that for multiple bottles. And then this thing called internet happened, and somehow it changed everything, right? So at that point, brands didn't have to think about, hey, we're going to put up a billboard, we have to put up our bottle label. Now we have to think about how it will live on an internet, on our websites. When internet came, that also introduced apps. They bring up Android, iPhone, different sizes of screens, specifications. And at that point, brand design had to go in and spend again and again time to fine-tune those assets to those specifications. At that point, designer just had to go in and redo the same creative asset again and again with padding, with margins, with specific tone of voice. So if something works on Android, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will work on an iPhone. So again, we spend a lot of time on that. Of course, you could say that you could give users the possibility of just creating their own brand design. If somebody remembers this classic app called Winamp, early music player, so instead of us doing the hard work, we just give the users a possibility to do the same. But what we lose is the brand. We give the users possibility of doing their own customizations, but we lose the brand. So what really, really piqued my interest was actually Pepsi. Just recently, they released a rebrand, which have not been done, if I'm not wrong, in about 17 years. And with the Pepsi rebrand, the thing is that they understood that their brand will live in thousands of spaces. Not only they have to live on product itself, not only it has to live in online environment, not only it has to live in local spaces, but they have to live everywhere. And everywhere is such a huge topic, right? How can we keep being creative? How can we be those creative directors of the brand when we have to think about those small things, and how can we create more variations of the same brand approved assets without spending tremendous time on that? Of course, the Pepsi brand rebrand is such a bold, meaningful, and fun thing, but it's also overachieving. So it tries to be everywhere, and it tries to fit in everything with their brand. Not only they have to take care of margins and copy for all of those things, but they also have to take care of those tedious tasks the designer has to go in and do, right? So let's imagine, as an example, if we're doing a brand refresh and we think about, hey, we're only going to do billboards and we're going to do only product. Designer doesn't have to do much. He creates a couple of versions. That's done deal. We can use it for rest of the year, if not more. But if we have those previously mentioned environments, digital, online, physical spaces, those tedious tasks can take up the bigger chunk of your workday instead of focusing on the bigger picture. So for that, we used online and digital tools, such as Photoshop, Canva, Figma, right? And when we use those tools to do those tedious tasks, we spend way more time on fine-tuning things that doesn't bring the biggest value to the brand itself. It is there to just make sure that everything fits to the brand guidelines that we have already established. So if the logo has always 2.3 margins, then we always have to use it. But let's say that it's not true. Let's say that no longer we have to do that. Let's say that if we wanted to do thousands of versions of the same asset with specific margins, with specific padding, with specific tone of voice, without spending weeks and weeks in a tool. And I think, and here at Corebook we think that AI copilot is the one that will help you do that. So what it means is that instead of going into the platform itself, copying the original design, then pasting it in, making those small changes, exporting it, sending over to the brand manager, he approves, and then going on with your main duties as a designer, which is creating cool stuff, right? Just designers want to create cool stuff. Instead of that, we can just click on a single button. We can say, hey, generate variations of the same asset with those specific needs. Or what if we could just simply generate tone of voice for the new social media that we have decided to move into? Let's say that we have tremendous database of assets and copy that we are using for Instagram, for Facebook, for LinkedIn, for YouTube, and we're using that copy as a base, as a database to create a new copy that is always on brand, but we don't have to do the big legwork. Or same applies to visual assets, right? So with a simple click, with simple prompt, we can create multiple versions of the same asset. This is what actually we did with our own Corebook AI waitlist. So what we did is that we gave an AI prompt saying, hey, these are the assets that we have used previously. These are the brand guidelines that you can learn from. And please generate us a couple of versions for this asset. And here we have an examples of a couple of them from really, really cool people. So essentially, what it all drives back to is that every creative wants to be as Don Draper. He wants to be on a magazine cover. He wants to have a team that does meaningful, cool things. He doesn't want to be like this guy. He doesn't want to be with like 99.9% of work be done with small margins, right? We want to say, hey, we don't want to think about that at all, right? So essentially in every heart, every creative wants to create change for their brand. They want to do things that really, really is going to change how we perceive things. So this AI copilot allows us to be brand creator, not the tool. Because now, with our current tools, We can be creative. We can. But how many hours per month we can be? How many hours we spend on tedious tasks really doesn't bring the change. So a copilot is not here to replace you as a designer. It's not here to replace you as creative. It is here to be with you, next to you, your silent partner, that helps you bring down those small, tedious tasks to minimum, if not all of them. So things such as do's, don'ts, logo, clear space, things that designers just hate to deal with on a daily basis, we can just go in and say, hey, please fix this for me. So I do sound like a manager now by saying, please fix this or make the logo larger. But at the end of the day, these things can be done differently, faster, and maybe even better if we had a little bit of help from our good friend AI. So the main point that I have always wanted to bring home with this is, even if you don't remember anything else from this keynote, is that the future is generative. And AI will dramatically change how we perceive creative process. The question is, are you going to be the one who will say that, hey, internet is just a fab, or you're going to be the one who says, hey, this is a real cool thing that I maybe should try out, and it could maybe end up helpful for me. So it's not just a question about how, who, not if. That would be all